We cannot yet sing that line from The Merchant, now the election back and I'll die away. But I still hope you hear what we have to say. Now, joining us to give some takeaways from the election, as well as speaking on resilience in small island developing states, we have Dr. Genève Phillip-Durham. Now, Genève is an academic and research consultant in the field of international relations, and she's held management roles in both the private and public sector and has published on topics including resilience, governance, and diversification for development in Caribbean small island developing states and territories. Good evening, Genève. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we want to start off with some of your takeaways from the elections as we've just experienced.
Oh, wow. Well, the takeaways are still kind of coming in. But firstly, I'd like to say congratulations to the successful People's National Movement. And what really concerns me at this stage is some of the racial undertones that are still being perpetuated. And I'm also looking at what could kind of be called a very slim margin by which the People's National Movement would have won, actually losing one of the seats that it would have previously held. So cautious optimism is what I would say I'm looking at the next 5 years with. But I really think we have to confront some of the challenges that we saw cropping up, looking at the context that we have had for tribal voting, and to see that it is still very much prominent and alive in our socio-political context.
Now, speaking of the cautious optimism, though, I saw you post a quote, making out scenes, saw you post a quote from Dr. Hamid Ghani. So I want to ask, what platform does stability, as you define it, provide for moving forward?
I think if you look at the likes of Guyana and Suriname, for instance, which has had a similar politics to ours in the region, I think Trinidad would be a forerunner in terms of the stability that has been guaranteed by our electoral processes when you compare it to those two. And I really feel as if that the campaign promises or the mantra that the PNM has been going on and the management of the COVID-19 pandemic, actually, I feel confident in the stable hands, as I mentioned in that post as well, the stable hands and the stability that I think could be guaranteed stemming off of that management of the COVID-19. And I would say the absence of that very racially charged narrative that I saw hurt the UNC party, we get a sense that unity and stability could be guaranteed under the People's National Movement administration going forward.
Now, you spoke about COVID-19 and management during the pandemic thus far. Do you see any opportunities that we could take advantage of because of the disruption of COVID-19? And we juxtapose that with the continuation of a political party. So the disruption of COVID-19, the continuation of a political party, does that offer any opportunities moving forward?
Opportunities for whom exactly?
Because you deal with education. So I'll take that, just that specific topic or that specific theme in terms of looking at the way that we deal with education. Will this give us the opportunity to look at that, possibly make some tweaks or outright revolutionary changes? Do you see that happening?
I cannot say that I see it happening, and while we talk about education being part of the larger picture, I think it's just that a part of it, because I often talk about in my work about peace, which is a concept I came about with the importance of political will, agency, capacity building, and education for guaranteeing stability in very rocky waters, so to speak. And I think that that concept would become very important because we need to exercise political will to make some of the decisions that have to be made. And I know that during the management of the COVID-19, I would have always heard the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, say that he's not afraid of making unpopular decisions. And I think that would have augured well because we need to ensure that we have an education, not in terms of the curriculum and the school system. We need to ensure that we have a sensitized and well-educated public that understands some of the decisions and the measures that are being taken to guarantee our own safety and security, not just for the COVID-19 period, but even beyond that. And we have invested heavily engaged and educating an entire generation. So education, I think, is to be considered an important contributing factor in enhancing our productivity levels in a questionable or damaged economy, so to speak. And education, especially at the tertiary level, it would encourage, or it should encourage, the recipients to participate in some of the development roles to come about, not just nationally, but also regionally.
Now, you spoke about pace, and I think it's very interesting. So it's a beautiful opportunity. You spoke about pace, and you hinted a little at your work. So I think it's a beautiful opportunity for me to ask a little more about the work that you delve into on a consistent basis.
I look at governance and capacity and institutions and how that features in ensuring that we have stable democracies and stable economies, and I'm very much interested in the political economy of development, not an independent small island developing space, but I've also looked at non-independent jurisdictions in the autonomous constituencies of the Dutch Caribbean, Curacao and St. Martin.
Now, you spoke of Suriname and Guyana, and were able to juxtapose them somewhat against Trinidad and Tobago. Are we more different than similar, or similar than different?
In terms of Guyana and Suriname, definitely we are very similar in terms, as I said, in terms of the tribal voting, but different in terms of the outcome, which, while I don't want to go down the road of bashing any political culture or anything, oftentimes our elections would have been conducted free and fair of any war or any civil unrest and so on, which is not the case. We see how lengthy the electoral process, for instance, which is a very recent example, how lengthy that process would have been in Guyana, and the same has been the case for Suriname in the past.
I recently had a conversation with political scientist Dr. Winford James, and I asked him a question that I'm going to ask you as well. What do you think that we can do to energize young voters or young individuals to enter into the process of governance, be it on the side of being a candidate or be it on the side of being an elector? Because some people say it doesn't make sense, so why bother stain my finger?
Understood.
What do you say?
I think that the rhetoric and the narrative has to be changed. I mean, one thing that I was disappointed to see was that we are still going down the road of paving roads on the eve of the elections, and I think that it is extremely disrespectful and embarrassing and not a very good negotiating tool for securing a vote or ensuring that young persons or the youth vote is counted. And, you know, seeing young people coming out of a system of free education from nursery to tertiary and using those types of rhetoric, that definitely does not appeal to, I would still consider myself a youth voter, and that definitely does not appeal to me. And we have provided educational opportunities. There's been no shortage that we've provided for our population. So when we do things in that manner and we provide a manifesto, for instance, less than 2 weeks before the election, it says to me that you are really hurting yourself in terms of getting that youth vote. You know, so we need to give them a seat at the table and encourage them to be a part of the conversation. They are the ones on the ground, and they are the ones that really can relate to what is taking place in the minds of the youth. you know, so we need to ask ourselves the questions, are we looking at paving the roads, or are we looking at providing job security for so many highly educated persons who are sitting with undergraduate and postgraduate degrees on month-to-month contracts doing clerical jobs. So against that backdrop of no job security and the inability to qualify for credit and so on, you end up with a very disgruntled and unpatriotic youth populace, and then you wonder where the problem stems from. So I think that engaging the youth is very important over the next 5 years, and engaging also marginalized communities to ensure that you continue to have their support.
So we want to thank you for engaging with us thus far. We take a short break. We turn the conversation around radically, and we talk about the Virtual Island Summit when we return.
Thank you.
Stay with us. Welcome back. We are speaking with Dr. Genève Phillip-Durham. And Genève, what is the Virtual Island Summit?
So the Virtual Island Summit is a social entrepreneurship summit that focuses on getting islands networking to discuss and collaborate on creative solutions to some of the shared challenges. And I'm very proud to say that Trinidad and Tobago is among the largest cohort of ambassadors selected by the Island Innovation Team for that summit, September the 7th to 16th.
Now, how did you find out about it? And what made you want to say, okay, well, this is something that I want to be a part of?
In 2019, my colleagues and I, we were part of a committee which executed the first Island States and Island Territories Conference in Aruba. And in doing some of the admin follow-up and trying to catch up on networking, which I hadn't had the opportunity to do during the conference, I saw the name James Elsmore, who is actually the brainchild of Island Innovation. And I reached out to one of my colleagues and I told them we had James Elsmore, a Forbes 30 under 30 social entrepreneur, who'd been doing really impactful work. And as I continue to follow his initiatives, he launched the first Virtual Island Summit, which was actually last year, and was very successful. And being very passionate about all things island governance and island innovation, and my passion for contributing to ideas on how islands might be able to develop more sustainably, I decided to respond to his call for ambassadors and was successful amongst with my other Trinidad and Tobago colleagues.
Now, not asking you to bash, but at the same time, in terms of sustainability, where are we? Or what level of the spectrum are we with in terms of what it is we do?
Well, I would say that we have a lot of work to do, and I would have, linking back to the late publication of manifestos and so on, I always think that documents such as those should be very closely aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, especially since Trinidad and Tobago is a very carbon-intensive island in our sphere. So because I didn't have the opportunity to compare to see what some of these goals were or some of the manifesto ideas were in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals, I can't speak to what we might see unfolding in the next 5 years, but I do appreciate the move towards the encouraging persons to have more fuel-efficient vehicles and the incentives provided for that. And some of the initiatives such as the Green Energy Fund, which NGOs and so on can benefit from to embark upon sustainable development projects locally. But I think we need to see much more taking place. And that, I believe, would have to come because we can no longer be dependent on our hydrocarbon industry, you know, and be such a carbon-intensive country in our hemisphere.
Definitely. Now, you've put a lot of thought into creating sustainable islands. What are some of the low-hanging fruit, things that we can easily say, okay, well, let's do this in the short term while working towards working towards incremental steps that would be a little more long distance?
I think sustainable waste management and recycling would be some of the low-hanging fruits. Sustainable agriculture. I think year after year, we would have challenges related to flooding and the sustainability of our agricultural sector. And now we have persons talking about hydroponics and aquaponics and vertical farming and different types of non-traditional farming methods. And I think those are some of the initiatives that we can look toward to kind of breaking away from our dependence on the oil and natural gas sector. And it would also be helping us to diversify as we embrace more sustainable development models and getting along the route of diversifying our economy.
Now, 7th to the 13th of September, that is when the summit is in. How do people become a part of it? Who is it for? Is there a specific target? Now, you spoke of social entrepreneurship, but who do you want to see log on to this?
Well, we will have individuals from across the world, entrepreneurs, NGO leaders, policymakers, industry experts, and academics. Anyone who is interested in the sustainable development of not just small island developing states, but also rural communities across the world. And the aim is really to cover the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals and having speakers and attendees from more than 100 island communities will allow for intersectoral collaboration from the public and private sector, which of course is much needed when you're talking about coming up with ideas and innovations for sustainable development in the future. So we are really opening up this initiative or this summit to a broad sector of individuals which represent different streams of the service-based industries and so on. And the event really focuses on innovation and ingenuity in island and rural communities.
Now, I hear ideas, I hear engagement, I hear innovation. I don't hear anything about cost.
About?
Cost.
It's totally free. It's totally free. One of the most important things to note, it's totally free to all participants, and it's also carbon free. So no carbon, of course, no travel is involved, and this was totally coincidental. As I said, last year was the first edition of the Virtual Island Summit. So by reducing the need for air travel or eliminating completely the need for air travel, island innovation is really walking the talk in terms of doing it for climate change and the environment.
All right, so with that in mind, we encourage you, the viewer, the person who's tuning in, to go to Island Innovation. It's on Facebook. They will also give you an idea of the website, and from there you can get a further idea of how to be a part of this Virtual Island Summit. But we want to thank our TNT ambassador, Dr. Genève Phillip-Durham, for being a part of this conversation and giving us a little insight into some of these things. So thank you so much, and we want to thank
you for having me. I hope to see you virtually at the Virtual Island Summit, so just look for us via Instagram and LinkedIn and so on with the name Virtual Island Summit or Island Innovation, and be sure to register for free.
Definitely. Thank you. Fingers crossed on that. So we want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning in on behalf of the entire news team. I'm DK Roster. Good night.